From her gothic lair, game girl host Dee Crowley.
Hey guys, Dee here, and welcome to this week's Game Girl. As you know by now, this is Bond week. So what other game would we be talking about except for Goldeneye 007? Crowley, Dee Crowley. Anyway, this game was released in 1997, and it was based off of the 95 film starring Pierce Brosnan. This game has a 96%, 96 out of 100 on Metacritic. You guys, this is one of the most beloved games of all time, literally touted as one of the best games of all time, and there is a reason why. Now, this was one of the very first FPS games to be released on console. Up until then, it was basically PC only. And this was developed by Rare and published by Nintendo. So this was for the N64, okay? Now this came a year after Resident Evil. So this game has aged much better in its original form than Resident Evil. And that's saying something, because I love my Resident Evil. The graphics in terms of this game are amazing for 1997. Not only that, the music is wonderful. It is bitchin'. It's great. So what's such a big deal with this is that this was leaps and bounds for the FPS style of games. Up until then, it had more of, you know, a Doom style to it. This gave it stealth options. Goldeneye 007 gave it stealth options. Strategy, you had to really think about what you were doing. Unless you had a silencer on your gun, anytime you shot, you would alert guards nearby. It made you really think about your gameplay. You got to kind of roam around free in these 3D worlds. You had several different locations that you went to, several different countries that you played in. This game spans from a story from 1986 to 1995, I believe. And it's all surrounded, you know, it's Soviet Union, a satellite called the Goldeneye. Basically, I will be honest, I've never seen a Bond movie.
Sell crazy someplace else. We're all stocked up here.
So, I don't know how close this game is to a film at all. I'm sorry. But, yeah, so, okay, I have notes. Hold on. So this is the Pierce Brosnan Bond. Yes, this is the Pierce Brosnan Bond. This was a single player game and a multiplayer game. So the single player was obviously campaign. Multiplayer, you could fight with each other, right? The sales of Goldeneye 007 surpassed those of Ocarina of Time. So this game became the third best-selling Nintendo game of all time. So that's a pretty big deal. This game laid the groundwork for all FPS games and its style to come. So the games that you play now, if you're like, I'm an FPS player, I like Battlefield is my jam. However, I just got done playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and I am friggin' stoked for this. Like, this is, I love FPS games, but the style that it is now is thanks to Goldeneye 007. The gunplay in the 1997 game isn't too difficult. The guards go down pretty easy. It doesn't look like a hard game, but it's a fun game. It's aged really, really well. That campaign is about an hour and a half long, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, depending on how you play the game. But there was a remake in 2010, and this was a Daniel Craig Bond. So the story changed slightly, but this is definitely a remake. Like, they have places in the game where you can see side by side. This is the original graphics. This is the newer graphics. The 2010 game came out on Wii, it came out on Nintendo DS, it came out on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and the graphics are great. I mean, this looks like your run-of-the-mill FPS game of PlayStation 3 and later generations. Like, it looks like an FPS game. Now, that's not saying that it's a bad game. It looks good, but it's nothing special. It got an 81% for the Wii at Metacritic, and it got a 64% for the Nintendo DS at Metacritic. So, not as widely loved by far. So, you know, it's not a bad game. It looks good. However, it just didn't have the impact because Goldeneye 007 in 1997 changed the game. Think of it this way. Whether or not you like the game it has no, you know, it doesn't matter. You love it, you hate it, doesn't matter. Think of it this way. Blair Witch Project. I think it's one of the best movies of all time. Most people think it's overrated. That's fine. But nobody can deny the impact it had to the horror industry and found footage specifically. It changed the game, and movies that are even being made now, 20 years later, are affected by the style and how that movie was filmed. So whether or not you love Goldeneye 2000, oh my god. So whether or not you love Goldeneye 007 or you hate it, it cannot be denied that it had a huge impact on the gaming industry and FPS games specifically. Now, the new one, it was developed by Eurocom and InSpace, and it was published by Activision. But again, by this point, FPSs had changed so much to kind of fit the model that it is today, that it just didn't have the impact. But that new 2010 campaign is about a 4-hour campaign. Again, a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on how you play the game. Same basic story. I think it had an additional character or two to fit the new Bond style, but otherwise good game. But if you're gonna play Goldeneye 007, I would 100% get out there on if you have your hands on a Nintendo 64, yeah, I'd play it on that, because if you're gonna do a Goldeneye 007 game, you gotta play it right. You gotta do it on the original. So that is what I know about Bond games. It's not much, but it's enough. I think if you like FPS games, do yourself a favor, and if you get a Nintendo 64, just play it. It's going to be worth it, worth your time. And now that Bond week is finished, you know what that means? Spooky, scary skeletons. That's spooky, scary time. Spooky scary time. So that means that next week I am going to be starting my spooky games, all spooky all the time until Halloween, maybe a little bit after, but who knows. So I will see you guys on the next game, girl. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.